December 17th, 1944. Lignaville, Belgium. Snow falls in thick, wind-blown sheets, muffling the distant rumble of artillery. The war has entered its final winter, but the men of Camp Grupp Paper move like ghosts through the frozen pines. Engines idling low, tracks grinding through ice. Petite ahead of a Panther column rides Oberstleutnant Karl Fischer, a 43-year-old veteran of the Eastern Front. His greatcoat is stiff with frost. His binoculars are cold against his cheek. For a brief moment, the wind parts, and he sees it, a cluster of fuel drums stacked beside a shattered stone farmhouse, a U.S. fuel dump. Exactly what the German offensive desperately needs. Fischer lowers his binoculars and speaks into the throat mic clipped beneath his scarf. Vorsichtig vor. Not a shot unless fired upon. The Panthers crawl forward. Snow hisses under their tracks. Somewhere ahead, an American sentry coughs, unaware that a German armored spearhead is about to explode from the trees like a steel avalanche. A nervous private beside Fischer mutters, "Herr Oberstleutnant, if this is what intelligence says, nearly 50,000 gallons. We can fuel half the regiment." Fischer doesn't respond. He's calculating distances, gradients, road widths. The thousand small factors that decide whether a miracle is usable or useless. By 10:14 a.m., the farmhouse is surrounded. American mechanics in oil-stained jackets raise their hands as German grenadiers fan out across the muddy yard. A sergeant from the 291st Engineers curses and kicks at a fuel drum, and its hollow metallic ring tells the Germans everything they need to know. Inside the barn, Fischer surveys rows of gleaming metal barrels marked U.S. Army, high octane. He taps one with his knuckle. Full. He taps another. Full. God im Himmel. One of his officers whispers that it is the single largest haul of American fuel Fischer has ever seen. More than 50,000 gallons. Enough to keep Camp Grupp Paper moving for another day, maybe two. Enough to punch deeper into the Ardennes and toward the Meuse bridges, Hitler's obsession. But Fischer sees something the younger men do not. Something ominous. Something fatal. The barrels are the wrong shape. The labels specify 100-octane aviation fuel, incompatible with most German tanks. Half the drums are already frozen solid, thickened into useless slush by the sub-zero December cold. And the biggest problem of all, no German trucks are anywhere near this location. Outside, the noise of the captured American half-tracks grows louder as German drivers test their controls. The engines sputter. Unfamiliar machines pressed into sudden service. Fischer steps into the cold and watches a group of grenadiers attempt to roll a drum toward a vehicle. Their boots slip on ice. The barrel tips, crashes down, and begins to leak a thin, reeking line of fuel into the snow. The lieutenant hurries over, proud, breathless. "Herr Oberstleutnant, we've secured the perimeter." The Americans abandoned everything in their retreat. Fischer nods, but his eyes trace the narrow road leading away from Lignaville, a winding, fragile ribbon carved through dense forest. Behind them, traffic jams of German armor are already forming. Panthers, half-tracks, and supply vehicles nose to tail, engines idling, burning what precious fuel they still have. This corridor was never meant for a mechanized division, and certainly not one advancing at blitzkrieg speed without blitzkrieg logistics. "We need tankers," Fischer says quietly. The lieutenant blinks. "Sir, tankers. Fuel trucks. Ours, not theirs. Otherwise this," he gestures at the mountain of barrels, "might as well be snow." The lieutenant hesitates. Field Marshal Model promised reinforcements on the second day. Fischer almost laughs. Promises had become Germany's primary export in 1944 that a burst of distant machine gun fire echoes through the valley. American resistance stiffens with every mile the Germans advance. Worse, the precious hours of surprise, the heartbeat of any offensive, are slipping away. Inside his command half-track, Fischer spreads a map across his knees. The Battle of the Bulge is in its second day, and already the plan is unraveling. The Germans had counted on capturing Allied fuel dumps to keep the offensive alive. It was the only way their tanks could reach Antwerp, but capturing fuel was one thing. Using it was another. That he hears boots crunching outside. A messenger climbs aboard, removes his helmet, and salutes. Report from Papers HQ. We're to keep advancing. Priority to speed. Fisher's jaw clenches. Speed. Always speed. But speed requires fuel, delivered, pumped, filtered, and distributed in a way no German unit in the Ardennes is equipped to do. Tell Hopstern for paper, Fisher says slowly, that unless someone conjures a fleet of tankers from thin air, we advance until we run out of fuel. And then we walk. The messenger hesitates. Sir, with respect, the SS won't appreciate that message. Fisher fixes him with a hard stare. I'm not here to be appreciated. As afternoon deepens, the sky bruises into a heavy gray. German troops swarm the dump, rolling barrels, siphoning what liquid they can into jerrycans, improvising funnels from torn-off helmets and smashed water cans. The air reeks of gasoline. Fisher walks among them. Everywhere he sees ingenious desperation, but also the unmistakable handwriting of defeat. In the distance, a Panther engine sputters and dies, out of fuel. Minutes later, another. Snowflakes drift through the air like falling ash. The young corporal approaches with a clipboard taken from the Americans. Herr Oberstleutnant, sir. Their inventory list. It says most of this was meant for airfields further west. Fisher flips through the pages. Columns of numbers. Octane ratings. Delivery schedules. Allied supply networks so vast and redundant that losing 50,000 gallons barely registered as a setback. And suddenly the truth hits him like a blow to the chest, that a truth he'd sensed on the Eastern Front, at Normandy, and now here in the Ardennes. The Americans didn't rely on miracles. They planned, transported, delivered, and replaced. For every barrel captured here, they had 100 more on the road, in depots, on ships, on trains. Germany was running on fumes, literally and figuratively. The Reich had gambled everything on this last offensive, and now, standing in front of the largest single fuel haul of the battle, Fisher feels the ground shift beneath him. This windfall won't save them. IT will only postpone the inevitable. His breath forms a white cloud in the frigid air. This, he murmurs to himself, is not victory. It is the confirmation of defeat. Behind him, a German tank backfires weakly. The sound echoes through the forest like a dying heartbeat. Fisher turns toward the road west, toward Malmedy, Stavelot, and the Meuse beyond. The offensive must continue. Orders demanded. But he knows now, with complete clarity, that Germany's last gamble has already failed, and no amount of captured fuel can change that. December 18th, 1944. Outside Stavelot, Belgium, dawn breaks weakly over the Ardennes, a pale, anemic light filtering through frozen branches. The temperature has dropped again, hard enough that the snow squeaks beneath boots and the steel hulls of tanks groan like icebound ships. Oberstleutnant Karl Fischer stands beside his command half-track, collar turned up against the wind. His men break camp around him, stamping feet, rubbing hands, cursing the cold through chattering teeth. Engines cough awake, one after another, until the forest vibrates with the uneven rumble of armor trying to move on fumes. Fisher studies the narrow road ahead. Stavelot lies scarcely 2 miles to the west, 2 miles held by elements of the 30th Infantry Division and a handful of engineers who have dug in among stone houses, churchyards, and hedgerows. 2 miles, Fisher thinks. But 2 miles can be a lifetime in winter war. That a Panther rolls up beside him, its commander rising halfway from the cupola. Herr Oberstleutnant, he calls over the engine noise. The lead tanks request permission to advance in column. They have enough fuel for perhaps an hour. An hour, Fisher repeats. He glances at the jerrycans strapped to the hull. A pitiful number. Barely enough for a single engagement, that he gives a short nod. Vorwärts. But cautiously, the column begins to creep forward. Tracks bite into frozen ruts. Grenadiers trot alongside, rifles clutched tight, faces hidden behind scarves. And then, as the lead Panther rounds a bend, the stillness shatters. The burst of .50 caliber fire rips through the trees. The unmistakable clatter of a Browning M2. Bullets spark off the Panther's glassy plate. Deck come, take cover. Fisher shouts. The forest erupts. American heavy machine guns open up from concealed emplacements overlooking the road. Mortar rounds thump in, sending fountains of snow and earth skyward. The offensive slams to a halt in minutes. Fisher crouches behind the wreckage of an American Jeep, shouting orders into his field radio. Bring the mortars up. Fire smoke along the ridge. Keep the Panthers buttoned. A runner arrives, sliding across the ice. Sir, fuel situation worsening. The units behind us, many are stuck. They can't move until we redistribute. Redistribute, if fuel were something the Germans possessed in neat, organized abundance. Fisher rises from cover, ducking as a burst of American small arms fire snaps overhead. He surveys the chaos. Panthers stuck in traffic jams, grenadiers hugging the ditches, wounded being dragged toward improvised aid stations. Every minute they linger here, they burn precious fuel merely idling, that he grits his teeth. Tell paper staff, we cannot push through Stavelot without fuel. If we expend what little we have here, a nearby explosion interrupts him. A mortar round lands close enough to shower him with dirt and splintered wood. The runner stumbles backward, shaken. What are your orders, Herr Oberstleutnant? Fisher's answer is immediate. We seize the Stavelot Bridge. At any cost. Because without that bridge, without the roads beyond it, they will die here on the forest floor, frozen inside tanks that never got the chance to run dry. The Panther crews advance again, guns thundering. The duel is brutal and intimate. Machine gun nests crushed under tank treads. American squads falling back house by house. Snow mixes with brick dust and black smoke. Fisher joins a group of grenadiers sprinting across an open field toward the outskirts of Stavelot. Bullets whip past. A Panther behind him fires point-blank into a row house, sending timber and shingles raining down. They reach cover. A stone wall near the town's chapel. There, Fisher sees it for the first time. The Lau River Bridge, arching over the icy current. If they can take it intact, the road to Trois-Ponts opens. If the Americans destroy it, the offensive fractures irreparably. Smoke grenades. Cover the advance. Fisher shouts. Grenadiers hurl canisters. White plumes billow outward. Under this swirling cloak, German troops surge toward the bridge. For a moment, it seems possible that they might reach it before the Americans detonate the charges. But then the ground trembles that a deep, stomach-punching boom rolls across the river valley. The bridge erupts in a cloud of smoke, stone, and shattered girders. Chunks of masonry crash into the water below. The central span collapses like a dying animal. And as the smoke clears, Fisher sees the truth. The Americans have pulled back across the river, leaving the crossing destroyed and the German advance strangled. For a long moment, Fisher stands in silence, watching the remains of the bridge crumble into the current. His breath comes in haggard white bursts. Snow settles on his helmet. A young sergeant approaches, face ashen. Sir, what now? Should we attempt to ford elsewhere? Fisher turns slowly. The fuel barrels at Ligneville are hours behind them. Most are inaccessible, frozen, or spilled. The tankers they need will never arrive, and every tank here has burned more fuel in combat than they managed to capture the day before. He finally speaks. Now, we hold. And we pray the Americans make a mistake. But deep in his chest, he feels a cold certainty. The mistake wasn't the Americans, it was Germany's. Launching an offensive that could never be supplied, that a Panther nearby sputters, exhaust coughing weakly. The engine dies. The crew stares at Fisher, waiting for orders. He cannot hide the truth from himself any longer. This is not blitzkrieg. This is a machine running on its last fumes. And once it stops, it will never move again. December 19th, 1944. Approaches to Trois-Ponts, Belgium. Night presses down over the Ardennes like a suffocating blanket, starless, moonless, and unnaturally still. The wind has died, and with it the groan of the trees. Even artillery seems to pause its distant heartbeat. Only the ticking of cooling tank engines breaks the quiet, each faint metallic ping echoing across the snow-crusted valley. Oberstleutnant Karl Fischer kneels beside a small fireless lantern, map unfolded between two frozen stones. His gloves are off, He needs bare fingers to trace the thin roads toward Trewapons. But the cold bites deep, turning his knuckles white. Behind him, the silhouettes of panthers loom like stranded iron giants, dark against the snow. Crews huddle beside them, smoking in silence. The mood is heavy, brittle. Everyone knows they've lost the bridge at Stavelot. Now their only hope is a rapid push toward Trewapons before the Americans seal that road too. Fuel gauges, however, tell another story. Most tanks sit below a quarter full, but a few register nothing at all, and more panthers sit in the forest behind them, immobile, abandoned by necessity. Fisher rubs his brow, eyes following the pencil-thin line of the route ahead. If they fail to reach Trewapons tonight, they won't reach it at all. Footsteps crunch through the snow. Hauptmann Lucas Brandl, one of Fisher's most dependable officers, approaches, helmet under his arm, face flushed from the cold. "Carl," he says quietly, switching from formal titles, a sign of urgency. Paper's column is demanding movement. They say we must push now or not at all. Fisher doesn't look up. And with what fuel, Lucas? Spit? Wishes. Brandl sighs. Some crews suggest draining the disabled tanks. A few gallons each. If we strip everything we have, he hesitates. Maybe enough to get the lead panthers through the next village. Fisher closes his eyes. Vultures strip the wounded to keep the healthy moving. That was the logic of this offensive. Harsh, unrelenting, and blind to long-term survival, he rises to his feet, stiff joints protesting. Very well. Order the crews. Siphon everything. Prioritize engines in the best condition. Brandl nods grimly and disappears into the dark. Moments later, Fisher hears it. The choking slurp of fuel hoses, the clatter of metal jerrycans, the muttered curses of crews watching their own tanks drain dry. Verdammt, she'll never move again. One Panther gunner murmurs as his tank's last liters are pulled out. Another crewman kicks the frozen tread of his immobilized machine. They'll find her here in spring, full of snow. And still the work continues. Fuel, the lifeblood of the offensive, is being cannibalized from its dying organs. WY midnight. A slim handful of Panthers rumble back into motion. Their engines growl low, cautious, as if afraid to wake the night. Fisher climbs onto his command half-track, breath fogging the air. "Vorwärts," he orders. The armored spearhead inches forward along the narrow road toward Trewapons. Frost glitters like shards of glass on branches overhead. The column moves without headlights, guided only by the faint white of the snow and the glow of burning farmhouses in the distance. Evidence of earlier fighting. Every few minutes a tank coughs, wheezes, or sputters, sending a chill through the men following behind. One stall could halt the entire column. Fisher listens to each engine note, each mechanical sigh, as if they were the breaths of wounded soldiers. They reach the village of La Glise shortly after. Two on the houses here are dark and empty. The civilians long fled. The air smells faintly of sulfur and scorched timber. Brandl rides up beside Fisher. American patrols reported ahead. They're blowing bridges as they fall back. Fisher's jaw tightens. Then we must reach Trewapons before dawn. But as they clear the last rise, they stop dead. Below them, the final road into Trewapons is clogged. Not with enemy forces, not with barricades, but with the twisted wreckage of two German fuel trucks. One lies on its side, wheels in the air. The other is burned out, a black skeletal shell. Both destroyed in an earlier American airstrike. The only trucks that could have saved them. The only trucks that could have moved the captured fuel from Ligniville. The only trucks that could have kept this offensive alive. Fisher steps off his vehicle and approaches the wrecks. He touches the scorched frame of the nearest tanker. Cold flakes of charred rubber crumble beneath his fingers. He doesn't swear. He doesn't shout. He simply stares, as though looking at the corpses of men he failed to save. Brandl joins him, whispering, "This was our chance, Carl." Fisher answers quietly, hollowly. It was never a chance. Only a delay in realization. He turns toward the horizon. The eastern sky is beginning to lighten, a warning. When dawn comes, the American fighter-bombers will be back, and German armor caught in these valleys will be little more than painted targets. The radio crackles, a panic voice from the rear. Command to forward units. Panthers stalled. Multiple vehicles out of fuel. We cannot hold this position if attacked. Request immediate orders. Fisher lifts the handset slowly, meeting Brandel's eyes as he speaks into the mic with a certainty he has not felt since the war began. Tell all units, prepare defensive positions. This is as far as we go. There is silence. Then the voice on the radio. Sir? Repeat. Fisher closes his eyes. Snow drifts past his face like falling ash. He feels both lighter and infinitely heavier. The offensive ends here. In that moment, he knows the truth with absolute clarity. Germany didn't lose the Battle of the Bulge at Bastogne or the Meuse that IT lost here, in these frozen valleys, where fuel tanks ran dry before the war machine reached its goal. The captured 50,000 gallons had fooled them, a mirage on a dying horizon. Fisher looks west one last time, that eye in the pale, pre-dawn glow. American engineers are already rigging the last bridge at Trois Ponts with charges. He watches, unable to stop them, as they prepare to close the door forever. He sighs. It's over, Lucas. We've just not told Berlin yet. December 20th, 1944. Heights above Trois Ponts, Belgium. Dawn finally breaks. Not as a brilliant sunrise, but as a bruised smear of gray across the sky. The light reveals the full, grim truth. Fisher's column sits sprawled across the snow-covered ridge like a dead serpent. Tanks angled awkwardly off the road. Half-tracks packed wheel to wheel. Men hunched in shallow foxholes, surrounded by crates of ammunition. They may never have the fuel to fire in anger again. The forest is still, save for the occasional crack of ice falling from branches. But Fisher hears something beneath that silence. The sound of an army holding its breath as he steps out of his half-track, boots crunching through icy crust. The air is knife-cold, slicing each inhale. He tightens his scarf and surveys the valley. Smoke rises lazily from Trois Ponts. American engineers have completed their work. The last bridge now sits ringed with fresh charges that Germany's road to the Meuse, to Antwerp, its final gamble, ends at those explosives. Hauptmann Brandel approaches, stamping warmth into his hands. Carl messages from Corps headquarters. They demand progress. They insist we push toward the river. Fisher gives a dry, humorless laugh. Push? With what? Hope. Frozen air. He looks at the Panthers behind him. Magnificent machines, mute and useless without fuel. Their guns point westward, immaculate, ready, but their engines remain cold. Brandel shifts uneasily. What shall I tell them? Fisher gazes toward the ruined wrecks of the German fuel trucks. Their twisted frames gleam black against the snow. Tell them, he says softly, that victory here requires miracles. And miracles ran out yesterday. A shout cuts through the brittle air. Flugzeug, approaching from the east. Men dive for cover. Fisher and Brandel drop to their knees behind a snow-laden hedge. Moments later, the sky fills with the rising snarl of engines, a sound that once meant hope to German soldiers, but now means obliteration. 2P. 47 Thunderbolts burst over the tree-line, wings glinting silver. Sunlight catches the rockets slung beneath them. Verdammt, Brandel mutters. Fisher says nothing. The first Thunderbolt swoops low over the immobilized column. Rockets streak downward in shrieking arcs. A Panther disintegrates in a bloom of fire, its turret flipping off like a kicked tin can. Another explosion tosses a half-track into a roadside ditch. Men scatter, shouting, slipping across the ice that machine gun fire rakes the road, stitching lines through snow and flesh alike. Fisher grips the ridge with white-knuckled fingers. This is how the Luftwaffe once attacked Soviet columns. Merciless, precise, unstoppable. Now, the roles have reversed. The German war machine, once feared across Europe, is no longer a spear point. IT is prayed at by mid-morning. The attack ends. The Thunderbolts vanish westward, leaving columns of smoke curling upward from burning vehicles. Fisher moves through the wreckage, stepping around shell craters, twisted metal, and the bodies of men he cannot even stop to cover with blankets. A Panther commander limps toward him, face blackened with soot. Herr Oberstleutnant, my tank is gone. My entire crew. His voice breaks. Fisher grips his shoulder. I know. He has no comfort to give. None that would be honest. He looks around at what remains. .15 Panthers are gone, at a dozen half-tracks. .2 flak vehicles overturned like toys, and still more engines cough weakly, running on fumes. The Americans haven't even sent ground forces yet. The collapse is no longer a possibility. It's happening in real time. Right beneath Fisher's boots, shortly after noon, a runner arrives with a dispatch that he is young, much too young, barely 18. His cheeks are flushed, not from cold, but from fear. Sir. He salutes shakily. Message from the 1. SS Panzerkorps. They demand immediate resumption of the advance. No delays. Fisher takes the paper, reads it, folds it once, and slips it into his coat pocket without a word. Sir, what should I report? The runner asks. Fisher studies him for a moment. Such youth, such blind obedience. Son, Fisher says quietly. Do you know what a tank is without fuel? The runner hesitates. A bunker, sir? Fisher shakes his head. No. A tomb. He places a hand on the boy's shoulder. Return this message. Position untenable. Units immobilized. Offensive cannot proceed. Write it exactly so. The runner swallows. Yes, sir. He sprints off, disappearing into the rows of dead machines. Brandel approaches. That won't sit well in Berlin. Fisher stares westward. Toward the Meuse they will never reach. Toward Antwerp they will never see. Berlin is already living in a world that no longer exists. He says. He lets out a slow breath, watching it fade into the cold air. Today, he murmurs, Germany's war ends. The rest is only noise and paperwork. The sun sinks early behind the ridges. Men light small fires. Wounded are tended to. Crews salvage what they can from broken machines. Fisher stands alone at the edge of the ridge. Below him, Trewapance glows faintly as American engineers finalize their defenses. Every bridge the Germans needed is now destroyed. Every road they hoped to use is cut. Their armored spearhead has withered into a stranded, freezing mass of steel. The realization settles upon him with absolute clarity. The captured 50,000 gallons had not been a turning point. It had been a warning. One Germany failed to read. Fuel was not merely a supply item. It was destiny, and destiny had deserted them. Fisher closes his eyes and listens to the wind whisper through the trees, a sound like distant applause. Not for victory, but for inevitability. He whispers into the cold. This is the end of the road. December 21st, 1944. Hills east of La Gleize, Belgium. The sky turns a flat, metallic blue as another day bleeds slowly into the frozen Ardennes. The wind returns with a low, mournful howl, carrying with it the smell of diesel smoke, cordite, and something else beneath it, resignation. Oberstleutnant Karl Fischer walks the ragged line of his immobilized battle group. The snow around them is blackened and churned, a patchwork of shell impacts and tank tracks that lead nowhere. Engines sit cold. Guns point westward without hope of firing. Men cluster around small stoves, their breath rising in ghostly plumes, eyes sunken from days without proper sleep. That a group of grenadiers struggle to dig deeper foxholes in the rock-hard earth. Their shovels strike frozen ground with dull, hollow thunks. Her Oberstleutnant, one of them, calls to Fisher, "The soil is like iron. We can't dig." Fisher nods once. Then stack stone. Use debris. Create walls where the ground will not yield. The soldier doesn't argue. There are no arguments left to make. Brandel joins Fisher at the edge of the clearing. His face is pale, not from cold, but from something he hasn't yet spoken aloud. "Carl," he murmurs, "radio intercept from higher command suggests they still believe we can reach the Meuse. They expect movement tonight." Fisher lifts his binoculars and scans the valley below. American trucks shuttle back and forth in an efficient rhythm. Engineers are erecting new positions. Infantry units move with purpose, confidence. They're not merely holding anymore. They're tightening the noose. "Berlin believes in fantasies," Fisher replies. "The Americans believe in fuel." He lowers the glasses. "Fantasy does not win wars." Brandel hesitates. "Some of the men, they're asking if we'll attempt a breakout." Fisher turns. Break out with what? Frozen boots and rifles against an entire American corps. His voice softens. No, we hold, Lucas. We hold so others can retreat. That is all that remains. Brandel doesn't argue. He simply nods. Around midday, a column of SS vehicles approaches, survivors from Camp Grubpaper, their vehicles battered, their crews hollow-eyed. Among them is a Panzer IV so covered in soot and snow it looks like a relic dragged from another century. Its commander, a gaunt Hauptsturmführer, limps toward Fischer. "Are you in command here?" he asks, breath frosting in the air. "For what little remains, yes," Fischer replies. "We need fuel. Anything. A liter, even. Our engines are starving." Fischer gestures toward the silent Panthers behind him. "We burned our last liters yesterday." The SS officer looks past him, expression tightening as understanding sinks in. "So," he says, "this is where we freeze." Fischer shakes his head. "No, this is where we wait, and where we hope the Americans want prisoners, not corpses." The SS officer gives a thin, humorless smile. "Hope? That's something I haven't heard in weeks." He turns away, shouting orders to his exhausted crews. By late afternoon, snow begins to fall again, silent, soft, and indifferent. It blankets ruined tanks, broken trees, and discarded ammunition crates. The battlefield is slowly being buried, as if the Ardennes itself is tired of the destruction. Fischer stands beneath a skeletal pine tree, watching the flakes drift atop the turret of a Panther that once spearheaded victories from France to the Soviet frontier. Now it sits like a tombstone that he remembers the beginning of the war. The roar of engines, the firestorm of blitzkrieg, the sense of unstoppable momentum. He remembers thinking the war would be over in months. That was 5 winters ago that a young radio operator approaches him hesitantly. "Herr Oberstleutnant," he says, holding out a message slip from Corps headquarters. Fischer takes it. The words are absurd in their detachment. Hold current position and prepare for renewed thrust. Additional fuel will arrive shortly. He almost laughs, T first quietly, then shaking his head until the young operator steps back, unsure. Fischer finally steadies himself and hands the slip to the boy. "Burn it," he says. "It will be the only warmth headquarters provides us." The operator nods and walks off. Dusk descends sharply, washing the snow in purple hues. Fires flicker among the German lines. Men speak in low voices. A few write letters home, though none expect delivery. Brandel approaches again, urgency in his voice. "Karl," reports from the north. "American armor is pushing from Malmedy. From the south, the 30th Infantry is advancing towards Stavelot. They're closing in." Fischer exhales slowly. "So this is how it ends," he says, "not with a breakout, but with an encirclement." He steps up onto the overturned hull of a half-track, looking over his men. Tired faces turn toward him. Eyes hollow, cheeks wind-burned, fingers raw from cold. He speaks clearly, firmly. "Soldiers of the fatherland, we no longer fight for victory. We fight for survival. We will hold our ground, protect the wounded, and delay the enemy long enough for other units to escape the trap we could not. No senseless charges. No waste of lives. Our duty now is to each other. There is no cheering, but there is understanding." Fischer climbs down. Brandel looks at him thoughtfully. "You know," Brandel says quietly, "many commanders would still be shouting about breakthroughs and miracles." Fischer shakes his head. "Miracles are for the living," he replies. "We are simply trying to remain among them." Night falls like a curtain. Snow continues to descend. Thick and steady it coats the steel beasts of Fischer's command, muffling all sound. The world becomes a silent graveyard of armor. Fischer walks among his men one last time, offering nods, words, gestures of reassurance he isn't sure he believes himself. Then he returns to his half-track, sits on the passenger bench, and allows the cold to settle into his bones. He knows what dawn will bring. American artillery, American armor, American infantry fanning out across the hills. And for his own men, surrender or death. He closes his eyes. Tomorrow, the Bulge begins to collapse. Tomorrow, the last German gamble dissolves in snow and smoke. And tomorrow, Oberstleutnant Karl Fischer will face the truth he has carried quietly for days. Germany's war didn't end. When the fuel ran out, it ended when men like him realized it, and could no longer pretend otherwise. South of Hansfeld, Belgium, for 10 hours, a thin veil of pre-dawn fog clings to the treetops as the column begins rolling again. Engines coughing, transmissions groaning under the winter strain. But even before the sky lightens, the road ahead announces its failure, a column of wrecks. Dozens of them, burned-out German trucks. American jeeps, shoved into ditches, shattered half-tracks, whose steel has buckled under artillery fire. The silhouettes rise like tombstones in the half-light. Colonel Kramer steps out of his vehicle, steam drifting from his breath as he surveys the silent graveyard of machinery. A young lieutenant approaches him, brushing frost from his field cap. Herr Oberst, the road ahead is impassable. Engineers say it will take hours just to drag one Jag Panther through. Kramer stares at the twisted bodies of vehicles blocking every bend. Hours, maybe half a day, and that's assuming no ambushes, no air attacks once the weather clears. Behind him, the stolen American fuel drums, 50,000 gallons of liquid hope, sit strapped to captured GMC trucks. Their engines idle with a rhythmic cough, begging to move. But there is nowhere to go. He closes his eyes for a moment. He had been so sure that momentum was on their side. Now momentum is irrelevant. The battle is slowing them down with hands he cannot see, tightening like a noose. Yes, the sky turns from black to deep blue. The first Allied artillery shells scream overhead. A dull thump shakes the frozen ground. Snow falls from branches. Then another, and another. Kramer looks up the slope. American guns, reoriented, zeroed in on the only road his column can use. His adjutant rushes up. Herr Oberst. Orders from Divisional HQ. We are to push forward at all costs. There's a long silence before Kramer answers. At all costs, he repeats quietly, not as agreement, but as a lament. Behind him, a Panther tank tries to maneuver around a wrecked Sherman on the roadside. The Panther's treads bite into the earth, but the ground gives way. The tank sinks nose first into a hidden ditch, like an iron beast caught in a hunter's trap. Its engine roars helplessly. More fuel wasted. More time gone. And yet the order from HQ still echoes. Push forward. At all costs, 0.05:32 hours. Inside the command opal, the colonel spreads a map across his knees. Thick red pencil marks, drawn earlier with confidence, now seem almost childish. Their planned advance curves elegantly toward Malmedy. Reality, however, is a jagged line of reports. Roads blocked, bridges destroyed, fuel-low tanks, immobilized American resistance stiffening. He hears boots crunch on snow outside. An NCO pulls open the door, breathless. Herr Oberst. The men are beginning to siphon the American fuel into our vehicles, just as you ordered. Some of them, they want to turn back. Turn back? Kramer asks, eyes narrowing. Into what? A frozen forest filled with patrols and roadblocks. The NCO doesn't answer. Kramer exhales slowly. They must understand there is no back. Only forward, if the roads open. But the roads will not open. Not today. Not tomorrow. As the colonel steps out of the vehicle, the sun finally breaks over the ridge, and with horrifying clarity, he sees the full length of the stalled column. Vehicles stretched for kilometers, all motionless, all burning precious fuel just to stay alive in the cold, like a serpent that has eaten too much and can no longer move. 0.06:10 hours. The decision. Kramer climbs onto a jeep's hood for height. Officers gather as he raises a hand for silence. Listen carefully. We have captured the fuel we needed for the breakthrough. But the terrain and enemy obstruction have cost us more than we gained. We must conserve what we have left. A few men shift uneasily. The offensive will continue, he says. But we will not waste fuel trying to force roads that are impassable. We wait for the engineers, and we keep every vehicle warm enough to start, but not a drop more. Someone in the back mutters, "We took their fuel, and still we can't move." The words hang in the icy air. Kramer looks across his men. Young faces, Hard faces. Faces already exhausted only days into an operation meant to end the war. Gentlemen, he says softly, almost privately, we have reached the point where fuel alone cannot save us. A gust of wind blows across the column, scattering snow dust like ash. Above them, the clouds begin to thin, and Kramer realizes what that means. Soon, the Allied fighter bombers will see them. Clear targets, the kind that don't move. He clenches his fists, leather gloves creaking. Prepare for air attack. The 50,000 gallons of captured American fuel sit there, an impossible prize won at the perfect moment. But without open roads, without support units, without replacement tanks and spare parts, without time, it is simply fuel for vehicles that cannot move. Kramer stands there as the wind cuts across the hillside, the muffled engines grumbling like beasts in chains. That a catastrophic truth settles in his mind with slow, painful certainty. Germany is not losing because it lacks courage, not because it lacks discipline, not because it lacks daring. Germany is losing because its entire war machine, steel, oil, ammunition, manpower, has become a hollow shell, and the colonel knows it. The moment of triumph has become the moment of realization. The fuel they captured will not change history, that it will only illuminate it, but a flicker of hope, revealing the darkness beneath. December 19th, 1944. Near Ligneville, Belgium, 9:12 hours. For the first time in 4 days, the sky is almost cloudless. That a cold, crystal blue vault stretches overhead, its purity broken only by long, jagged contrails forming high above the Ardennes. To any Allied commander, this is a blessing. To any German officer trapped on a frozen Belgian road, this is a death sentence. Colonel Joseph Kramer squints upward. He hears it before he sees it, that a distant whine, faint but rising, growing. The men in the column stop what they're doing. Heads tilt up, breath fogs in the air. Even the engines seem to quiet, as if the steel itself senses the coming threat. Then the sound sharpens into the unmistakable roar of American engines. Thunderbolts. The word slips from Kramer's mouth like a curse and a prayer at once. A sergeant sprints down the line. J-Bows. Everybody off the road. Hide the vehicles. Let's up move. But it's too late. The first P-47 Thunderbolt bursts out of the sun like a hawk striking its prey. Its wings glint silver. Its belly gleams with neatly arranged rockets. It drops low, too low for comfort. Its engine screaming. A second appears behind it. Then a third. Then 5 more. The men scatter, boots crunching through snow, scrambling into tree leans, behind rocks, beneath trucks. Some dive headfirst into ditches half filled with ice. Kramer remains standing for a moment longer, watching the planes descend, his jaw tight, his hands motionless at his sides. The captured fuel, the stalled armor, the blocked roads, the lack of reserves, and now, the clear-skied it is as if every obstacle in the world has been placed deliberately in their path. The first attack run hits like a hammered at AP-47 swoops in and looses a pair of rockets. The trails scream past overhead and slam into the lead Panther. A fireball erupts from the turret ring. Black smoke punches into the sky. The blast knocks men off their feet. A second Thunderbolt strafes the column. .50 caliber rounds tearing into metal and earth. Sparks and ricochets dance across the stalled vehicles. Fuel drums, American fuel drums, explode along the roadside like rolling bombs, fire climbing into the air with a deep whomp. Inside the chaos, Kramer is forced to take cover behind a knocked-out Kubel wagon as machine gun rounds chew through a stack of crates nearby. He presses himself against the frozen ground, hearing the staccato rattle of the American guns slicing the air overhead. And he feels it. Not fear, not yet, but something. Worse, recognition. This is the moment he dreaded. This is the moment he knew would come. The second attack run is even worse. The Thunderbolts circle back, diving with precision that speaks of total air superiority. They pick out targets easily. Tanks, trucks, fuel containers, and a long, unmoving trail of vehicles stretching for miles. A rocket slams into a German half-track loaded with spare ammunition. The resulting explosion shakes the forest and sends a plume of fire into the sky. Men run blindly through the smoke, coughing, dragging wounded comrades into snowbanks for cover, and nearby medic shouts, "Get him behind the embankment quickly!" While hauling a soldier with shrapnel embedded in his leg, Kramer crawls to a safer position behind an overturned American Jeep. Snow melts where incendiary rounds sear the ground. The column is no longer a forest. It is a shooting gallery. The fuel they captured is feeding the flames. 0.09:25 hours at a brief lull. The thunderbolts peel away to reform. For a moment, all is quiet except crackling fires and the moans of the injured. Kramer pulls himself upright, coughing smoke from his lungs. His adjutant, Captain Ernst Waldman, rushes over, ducking low as debris rains from a burning truck. "Herr Oberst, we must abandon the fuel trucks. They're turning the whole column into a beacon." Kramer turns slowly. Down the road, the 50,000 gallons of captured American fuel burn in great, furious pillars, each one rising like a monument to a doomed offensive. If we abandon them, the breakthrough dies. Waldman shakes his head. "Herr Oberst, the breakthrough is already dying." Another explosion punctuates the point. Kramer stares at the burning horizon, jaw clenched until his teeth ache, that he realizes that the Americans did not need to stop them with infantry. They did not need to stop them with armor. All they needed was a single clear day, the sky unobscured by cloud, a chance to see the long, helpless German column, Hitler's last gamble. Thousands of vehicles, elite armor divisions, the hope of a war-changing offensive, now sits exposed on an open road, eating itself alive through lost fuel, stalled engines, and burning trucks. The colonel whispers to no one, "The war has turned against us. Not here, not now, but long ago." ***. Waldman lowers his gaze. The fires roar higher. The thunderbolts return for another pass. Kramer straightens, shoulders stiffening despite the cold. "Order the men into the tree lanes. Scatter the vehicles. And, Captain," Waldman leans in. Kramer finishes, "Prepare to destroy the fuel trucks, that we cannot let them detonate under the next rocket run." There is no triumph left. Only duty. Only the grim discipline of a soldier who understands the truth, but must move forward anyway. The sky trembles with the returning howl of American engines. Kramer lifts his binoculars again, but he no longer looks like an officer anticipating victory. He looks like a man witnessing the death of an army. December 19th, 1944. Near Ligneville. 10:04 hours. The air shivers again and a thunderous roar rolls over the treetops as another flight of P-47 Thunderbolts dives in, sunlight catching their wings as they angle downward like metallic predators. Their engines reverberate through the frozen forest, a sound that seems to seep into the bones of every soldier on the ground. Colonel Joseph Kramer doesn't flinch this time. He simply watches. Watches as the sky becomes a weapon. Watches as the last illusions of momentum burn away. The third attack run is merciless. Thunderbolts skim the tree line, unleashing heavy .50 caliber fire that rips into the immobilized German column. The stalled vehicles have nowhere to hide, no ability to maneuver, no fuel to flee, no roads to escape through. That a Panther tries to rotate its turret toward the incoming fighters, but a rocket slams into its engine compartment before it can fire a shot. The blast sends the turret hatch flying open like a kicked lid, flames spewing out in a violent plume. Farther down the line, an American fuel truck, one of the smoldering prizes captured the night before, erupts in a towering fireball that sends shockwaves crashing through the snowfields. Men throw themselves flat as flaming debris rains down like pieces of a shattered sun. Kramer shields his face against the heat, his greatcoat whipping in the wind from the blast. Captain Waldman crawls over the icy ground toward him. "Herr Oberst." Both flanks are exposed. They're hitting us as if we were a marching band in the open. Kramer's voice is calm, eerily so, because that is exactly what we are now. 10:17 hours. The fire spread point. One of the colonel's sergeants sprints toward him, gas mask dangling uselessly from his belt, sweat freezing on his face despite the cold. "Herr Oberst, the ammunition truck is on fire. We need volunteers to pull the wounded away before it goes." Before Kramer can answer, a second soldier shouts from behind, "Too late, run." The explosion is deafening. Shrapnel whistles through the trees. The shockwave knocks Kramer and Waldman to their knees. When the smoke clears, a crater smolders where the ammunition truck once sat. Burning splinters and twisted metal litter the road. Kramer rises slowly, shaking ash from his coat. His ears ring. His muscles ache. But his mind feels disturbingly clear. For the first time in hours, he turns to fully observe the entire scene. Not just the violence of the airstrikes, but the choreography of failure playing out along the road that a column that should have spearheaded the German breakthrough at lightning speed now sits broken and bleeding in the snow. Vehicles are jammed together like trapped animals. Fuel spills across the ground in dark pools that catch fire with every direct hit. The captured American fuel, so carefully siphoned, so desperately needed, now burns away in great black pillars, turning the morning sky into a funeral shroud. 10:41 hours at a moment of silence. The thunderbolts bank away, disappearing behind a ridge. The forest quiets. Smoke drifts slowly upward, fading into the pale winter light. German soldiers emerge from the tree line cautiously, some dragging wounded comrades, others wiping snow and soot from their faces. A medic kneels beside a man whose leg is shattered, whispering words Kramer can't hear. Waldman steps to his side, breathing hard. "Sir, this is unsustainable. We can't advance. We can't retreat. We can't protect the fuel. We can't even keep the column together." Kramer does not respond. Waldman presses on. "The men need orders. Clear ones. If we stay on this road, we will be wiped out." The colonel keeps his eyes fixed on the burning fuel trucks. His thoughts drift to the promise of the Ardennes offensive, the hope of splitting the Allied armies, the dream of reaching Antwerp, of turning the war around in a single bold strike. Dreams he now realizes were little more than fumes, like the gasoline evaporating into the cold air around him. Finally, he speaks. "Captain, begin withdrawing the units toward the secondary forest track, that we scatter the vehicles, that we salvage what we can, and we destroy everything we cannot move." Waldman hesitates. "Herr Oberst, that will end the attack for this sector." "No, Captain." Kramer's voice is steady, but hollow. "The attack here ended the moment the sky cleared. We are only acknowledging it now." 11:03 hours. The order spreads down the line. Abandon the wrecks. Pull the wounded back. Spread out into the trees. Dismount all vehicles. Salvage ammunition and rations. Engineers, set charges on the fuel trucks, every last one. German troops move quickly, but not hurriedly. There is no panic left, only resignation wrapped in discipline. They know the truth. They can feel it in their bones. The offensive that promised to change the fate of Germany has begun to bleed out on a frozen Belgian road. Kramer walks past a Panther crew standing beside their immobilized tank. One of the gunners, his face smeared with soot, gives a tired salute. "This one won't move again, Herr Oberst." The engine's seized in the cold. Kramer nods once. "Take the machine guns and demolition charges. Leave the rest." The gunner hesitates. "It's a fine tank, sir. We captured fuel for it." Enough to reach Malmedy. Kramer gently places a hand on the young man's shoulder. A tank without a road is just a coffin made of steel. The gunner looks down, understanding. 11:26 hours. The final blow to demolition teams set charges on the last fuel trucks. Kramer climbs a small rise overlooking the valley. From here, he can see miles of the stalled column. Twisted, burning, frozen in place, he removes his gloves and rubs his temples, exhausted beyond words. Then he hears distant engines again. Waldman turns pale. Herr Oberst, more thunderbolts. The colonel closes his eyes. He does not curse. He does not pray. He simply whispers, "Let it be quick." The fighters scream overhead once more, rockets streaking down toward the helpless line. Explosions blossom like cruel flowers in the snow. The fuel trucks, charged with explosives, ignite all at once, their detonations merging into a rolling thunder that shakes the valley. That a pillar of flame rises so high it blots out the sun. The Ardennes offensive is dying. And Joseph Kramer knows it, that he watches the final flames consume the last of the captured American fuel, the fuel that was supposed to win the war. Instead, it has become the pyre of Germany's last hope. December 19th, 1944. Hillcrest above the Ligneville Road. 11:41 hours. Flames dance in the valley like a living thing. Orange claws tearing at the pale winter sky. Smoke rolls upward in thick, suffocating waves, blanketing the forest below. The air stinks of burning oil, melting rubber, scorched earth, and the bitter tang of cordite. Colonel Joseph Kramer stands alone at the crest, coat whipping in the heat currents. From this height, he can see everything. Every wrecked truck, every burning panther, every cluster of men dragging the wounded toward the trees. But he doesn't look at them, he looks at the fuel trucks, or rather, the blackened skeletons where they once stood. The 50,000 gallons of American fuel, captured at enormous risk, now burn in a single monstrous pyre that lights the valley like a funeral blaze. It should feel like defeat. Instead, it feels final, like an answer he always knew but refused to. Faced at a rustle of boots approaches. Captain Ernst Waldman steps beside him, soot streaking his face, his helmet dented from falling debris. Herr Oberst, the men are regrouping in the forest. Engineers have begun laying charges on the abandoned armor. We can save some machine guns, but not much more. Kramer nods slowly. And the survivors? Shaken, exhausted, but obeying orders. Kramer keeps his eyes on the valley. Good men, better than this war deserves. Waldman swallows hard. What are your orders now, sir? For a long moment, the colonel says nothing. His breath condenses in the freezing air, vanishing as soon as it forms, like everything else around him. Finally, we pull back into the tree line, that we form a defensive perimeter, and we wait for the next order from division, whatever it is. Waldman hesitates. Herr Oberst, do you believe there will be another order? Kramer lifts his chin and looks toward the distant west, where the fog is lifting and faint artillery rumblings echo from American lines. Yes, Captain, there will be another order. He pauses, but the war won't change. Not after today. 12:08 hours. Forest edge. Groups of German infantry cluster beneath the pines, weapons slung, helmets tipped back, faces hollow with shock. They watch the valley burn, silent as statues. That a corporal from the 12th Volksgrenadier Division approaches Kramer, his hands trembling despite his attempt to steady them. Herr Oberst, we did everything right. We struck fast. We took the Americans by surprise. That we found fueled. His voice cracks. We should have broken through. Kramer studies him with tired eyes. You did your duty. All of you did. But wars aren't won by daring alone. Or courage, or even surprise. They're won by endurance. That be why the side that can keep fighting after days like this. The corporal lowers his gaze, tears forming despite himself. Kramer continues, voice quieter. We no longer have that endurance. The Americans do. Their trucks keep coming. Their planes keep flying. Their fuel never runs out. Ours does, and today proves it. A heavy silence settles between them. The corporal nods, salutes shakily, and moves back to his unit point 12:37 hours. Inside a makeshift command post beneath the trees, a ruined American Jeep serves as a table. A torn map is weighed down with stones so the wind won't steal it. Kramer leans over it, Waldman at his side. The Ardennes offensive, Wacht am Rhein, had looked so promising on paper. Red arrows surged across the map like lightning strikes, converging on the Meuse River. The plan had demanded speed, surprise, and above all, fuel. Fuel they did not have. Fuel they gambled for. Fuel they briefly captured. Fuel they ultimately wasted. Fuel that now burns in the valley like a mocking beacon. Kramer runs a wool-gloved finger along the marked route toward Stavelot, then Malmedy. His voice is barely above a whisper. Even if we reached the Meuse, it was only the first step. We needed another 60,000 gallons to cross it, another 100,000 to reach Antwerp. We were trying to cross Europe on fumes. Waldman closes his eyes. Hitler demanded the impossible, but we tried to make it possible. Kramer looks up sharply. because that is what soldiers do, even when they know it's madness. He sinks onto a fallen log beside the jeep, rubbing his face with both hands. But madness catches up eventually, and today it caught US in the valley below. 13:02 hours. The wind shifts, a gust blows smoke across the command post. Kramer coughs, waving it away. Then he stops. Through the drifting haze, he sees movement across the valley. American scouts, small groups at first, moving cautiously, then moored an armored car creeping forward. The Germans watch silently from the trees. Waldman leans close and whispers, "Sir, they're probing the wreckage. They don't know how many of us are still here." Kramer nods. "Good. Let them stay cautious. We no longer seek ground, only time." He watches the American patrols move between burning trucks, silhouetted against the inferno that a strange calm settles over him. The enemy hasn't defeated them with superior tactics, nor with superior bravery. They defeated them with infrastructure, with logistics, with a war machine that never stopped moving, that he feels no shame in acknowledging it. Only clarity. 13:15 hours, the realization. Kramer speaks softly, more to himself than anyone else. This was the moment. Not the Meuse, not Bastogne, not Antwerp. Here, this road, this day, this fire. Waldman listens. The colonel continues. Germany did not lose the war when we ran out of fuel today, that we lost it when we believed we could win a modern war without the means to sustain it. Today merely proved it beyond all doubt. He stands, shoulders squared, the weight of the moment heavy but accepted. The Reich's last offensive has ended, even if the orders have not yet said so. He steps away from the jeep, moving toward the edge of the woods where the men wait. His voice is calm, steady, absolute. Tell the troops to dig in. From here on, we fight only to survive. In the burning valley behind him, the fuel that might have changed everything finally gutters out, and with it, Germany's last chance. December 24th, 1944. South of Stavelot, Belgium, before dawn. The woods shake with the distant, rhythmic pounding of American artillery, slow, methodical, increasing by the minute, like a giant clearing its throat before a roar. Colonel Franz Brecht looks up from his map case as a shell lands half a mile away, sending a muffled tremor through the frost-coated ground. Snow falls from the branches overhead, drifting onto his greatcoat. Around him, his battalion command group huddles behind an overturned Opel Blitz truck, its engine dead, its tank dry, its tires half buried in the frozen mud. Their breath hangs in the air like smoke. A lieutenant scrambles toward him. Helmet askew. Herr Oberst. Forward elements report they can't move any of the vehicles. Not even the Kubelwagens. They're out of fuel. Brecht closes his eyes. He already knew the answer long before the man reached him. In the distance, he hears the grinding rumble of American Shermans, several of them, moving with the confidence of armored beasts who know their prey is cornered. Brecht murmurs, mostly to himself, "We are trapped in a forest of snow and promises, none of them real." The lieutenant doesn't reply. Moments later, another runner arrives, out of breath and shaking. "Colonel, message from divisional headquarters. Hold your positions. Fuel resupply en route." Brecht lets out a short, humorless laugh. He has heard that promise every day for a week. But today, something is different. The Americans are no longer attacking blindly. They are pressing in with purpose. Artillery brackets the road behind them. Machine gun fire sweeps the tree line. Then, unmistakable, the low drone of fighter bombers, a P-47 Thunderbolts. Hogs, the Germans call them. Thick, brutal, and unforgiving. A sergeant yells, "Deckung, take cover." The sky erupts. Rockets streak downward. A truck bursts into flame. A Panzer IV, immobile, abandoned, detonates as if split by lightning, its turret hurled into the air like a child's toy. Brecht crouches low, hands over his helmet, the heat of burning gasoline washing across his face. When the strafing ends and the forest grows quiet again, he stands and surveys what's left. Half his column is gone. Feet away, a soldier tries to drag his wounded friend through the snow, leaving a dark trail behind. Brecht approaches, kneels, and helps lift the man. For a moment, The colonel looks not like a commander of men, but like a weary father shepherding what remains of his shattered family. He knows what must happen next. The golden moment, the fuel, the surprise, the audacious thrust toward Antwerp has died here in this Belgian forest. Germany did not need a defeat at the Meuse to be broken. It has broken itself on the road. Trying to reach it, he stands and calls his officers over. Gentlemen, we will withdraw south. Quietly, carefully. Take only what you can carry. Destroy anything we cannot move. Burn the maps. Burn the radios. A captain hesitates, but headquarters ordered. Brecht cuts him off. Headquarters orders us to keep driving. But look around you. He gestures to the snow-covered wreckage, the frozen bodies, the skeletal remains of vehicles that will never move again. Does this look like an army capable of driving anywhere? Silence. The men say nothing because they all know he is right. Another artillery round lands, closer this time. Panic flickers across a young corporal's face. Brecht places a steady hand on the man's shoulder. Courage, son. We march out together. No one is left behind. Then he turns toward the south, the direction of survival, or at least the direction of slower death, and issues the final order. Fall back. Destroy the fuel we captured. It no longer matters. The fire that started with hope now ends in smoke. The line of weary German soldiers moves into the shadows of the trees, one by one, swallowed by the same forest that once promised them victory. But behind them, the sky glows orange as the precious U.S. gasoline, the very lifeblood they once believed would save the offensive, burns away into the cold winter air. The flames rise like a funeral pyre for the last German gamble of the war. The Battle of the Bulge is not over. But for Colonel Franz Brecht, the epiphany has already come. Germany is finished. And now, there's only the long walk home. December 25th, 1944. Forest south of Stavelot, Belgium, dawn. The world is silent except for the occasional cracking of frozen branches and the distant rumble of artillery. Snow blankets the Ardennes in white, turning the battlefield into a muted graveyard. Smoke from yesterday's burning fuel trucks curls skyward, lingering like a ghost over the trees. Colonel Franz Brecht sits on a fallen log, helmet off, head bowed. His gloves are wet, his coat stiff with ice. Around him, soldiers move cautiously through the forest, dragging the wounded, collecting what meager supplies survived, and marking positions for demolitions that he looks across at the smoldering ruins of the 50,000 gallons of captured American fuel. Once it had promised mobility, a chance to punch through the Allied lines, to revive the Ardennes offensive. Now is only ash, smoke, and the bitter reminder of the futility of the last desperate gamble that a young lieutenant approaches him, shivering, cheeks red from the cold. Colonel, the men are asking, do we continue or surrender? Brecht straightens, looking at the forest ahead. The tracks of American tanks are already faintly visible in the snow, like predatory footprints in a white sea. We continue, he says, his voice steady, almost calm, but not toward victory, not toward glory, only toward survival. We retreat, regroup, and save what remains of our men. That is all we can do. The lieutenant nods silently, understanding the weight behind those words. 09:00 hours. The forest perimeter. Demolition teams ignite charges on the remaining immobilized vehicles. Panthers, half-tracks, and Kubelwagens erupt into flames one after another. The captured fuel drums, precious as gold the day before, detonate with roaring fury, throwing plumes of black smoke high into the sky. The men watch in solemn silence. No cheering, no anger, only a cold acknowledgement that their offensive, their gamble, their last hope has been destroyed not by the enemy, but by circumstance, logistics, and the inexorable march of modern warfare. Colonel Brecht stands beside his adjutant, Captain Waldman. Look at it, Ernst. He gestures to the burning fuel trucks. This is what the Ardennes offensive has been reduced to. A pyre of wasted effort, brilliant men, and stolen gasoline. Waldman nods, his jaw tight. It is a lesson written in fire. Yes, Brecht murmurs. Germany is not defeated because we lack courage. We are defeated because we ran out of what matters most, supply, fuel, and time. Today proves it. Afternoon. The German troops move through the trees, dragging wounded comrades and salvaging what can be carried. Artillery fire falls sporadically on the far side of the valley, but the Americans, cautious, systematic, hold the advantage. They control the roads, the skies, the rhythm of the battle. Brecht walks alongside his men, inspecting their morale, watching their fatigue etched into every face. Some glance at the burning valley behind them, eyes hollow, reflecting the orange flames in the snow that a soldier whispers beside him, almost to himself. We captured their fuel, and it still didn't matter. Brecht places a hand on the young man's shoulder. No, it did not. But what we captured tells us something vital. Even the smallest advantage means nothing if it cannot be sustained. Today we learned that lesson with the harshest teacher of all, reality. Evening twilight. The last fires died down, smoke drifting across the Ardennes like the last sighs of a dying beast. Colonel Brecht surveys the burned-out valley, the skeletal remains of vehicles, the charred earth where hope briefly lived. He kneels beside a destroyed half-track, running a gloved hand along the melted metal. This is how the war ends for us. Little by little, he whispers, not with thunder, but with the quiet realization that our machine is broken, that we cannot sustain our fight, that the Americans, with all their imperfections, have what we cannot: logistics, fuel, and endurance. Behind him, his men set up a defensive perimeter for the night. They move quietly, not with fear, but with the somber discipline of those who understand the truth. Their last offensive has died, and survival is all that remains. Brecht rises, brushing the snow from his coat, and looks west. The valley that was meant to carry them to victory now carries only memory of the captured fuel, the stalled columns, the frozen roads, and the inevitability of defeat. He inhales the cold air, sharp and clean. Germany is finished here, and we knew it. But today, at least, we witnessed it for ourselves. In the silent Ardennes, the flames die, the snow settles, and the first stars appear above the blackened forests. The Battle of the Bulge continues in the distance. But for Colonel Franz Brecht and the men under his command, the decisive moment has already passed. The captured 50,000 gallons of American fuel, the hope of a last surge, has been consumed by fire. And with it, the last illusion of victory for the Wehrmacht fades into the cold Belgian night.